I am Halli Casser-Jayne, and welcome to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, where along with my partner in politics, former White House correspondent Matthew Cooper, we slice and dice all things politics, and some days, Donald Trump too. This week we welcome the Halli Casser-Jayne Show's old friend, author of the #1 New York Times Bestseller, The Residents, Kate Andersen Brower, back to talk about her new, juicy presidential tell-all, her latest book, Team of Five, The President's Club in the Age of Trump. Oh boy, listen as we dish the dirt on Donald Trump and Melania Trump too. And stay tuned for our second half hour, when Matt joins me for our weekly take on this week's political headlines. We begin with Kate Andersen Brower. Here we go. Kate Andersen Brower has become a brand, the writer you want to read when you're looking for the human interest side and the fun background tidbits we all love and rarely get, the in-depth personal stories of those who inhabit our political world. Kate, a CNN contributor, spent 4 years covering the Obama White House for Bloomberg News and is a former CBS News staffer and Fox News producer. She has written for the New York Times, Vanity Fair, Time, The Washington Post, and more. In Team of Five, she explores the most exclusive fraternity in the world, made up of the formers, the five: Jimmy Carter, the late George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama, who most recently served as president, as well as at the man who has upended all things presidential, the current Oval Office norm-breaking occupant, Donald Trump, and a look at Melania Trump, too. Let's talk with Kate Andersen Brower. So, Kate, it's been a while. I haven't seen you in ages, but I think the first time we did talk was with The Residents, and I think I did the second interview for that book, which I loved. I love this book, too, though. Team of Five. This is really, this is a good thing. I'm glad that you did this when you did it. It's intimate. It's engaging.
Thank you.
And it's eye-opening. How do you like that? Why'd you want to do this book? What were you trying to explore? Talk to us.
Well, I've always wondered what happens when presidents leave the White House and first ladies, and they're no longer the most important, powerful people in the world. And the image on Inauguration Day of the Obamas flying off, everyone is thinking about Trump and at the swearing-in ceremony at the Capitol, but then they're flying off in the helicopter, and the helicopter always does circles over the White House, the place they lived in for 8 years, and takes them to Andrews Air Force Base, where they get on a plane, in their case, to Palm Springs, and what is going through their minds in those moments. And that's really what I wanted to get into. And then also, how do you carve out a path and a legacy when you have a sitting president who is has so much anger towards you and has undone almost everything that you accomplished in your term?
To say the least, right? To say that we live in interesting times, I mean, I think that's just an understatement at this point, right? Yes. Oh my gosh.
Exactly.
But our entire political world has been upended by this Trump guy. And this is who's occupying the residence. I go from Obama to this and my head just kind of swirls. You begin by telling us about your interview with Trump. Share with us that. I mean, that's hysterical, by the way. And your insight into him just from the initial meeting. We'll take it out further.
Yeah, it was interesting because, as you know, and we chatted about this a bit, it's very difficult to get interviews with former presidents. It is very tough. I mean, the Clintons, the Bushes, they have a lot of people around them. Jimmy Carter, not so much. I was able to talk to him. But Donald Trump, I just sent an email to his press secretary, and she said, well, when do you want to come in? And I don't know, to interview him. I don't know. I think it might have to do with the fact that he's very eager to talk about the subject, because not a lot of people ask him about the former presidents and where he'll fit in the club. And he wanted an opportunity to talk about how he thinks he's done a better job than they have. But, we met in the Oval Office. I asked him, he was sitting at the famous, I don't know if it's oak, but I have the description in the book, but this amazing, beautiful, resolute desk that every president in modern times has sat at. And the famous photo of JFK Jr., poking his head out of the desk. That's the one. So there's Donald Trump sitting behind this desk. And I said, do you feel more empathy for the men who sat at this desk before you and had faced these life and death decisions? And he just said, no. Not at all. He doesn't feel a sense of empathy for them. And, he doesn't, I asked him if he thinks he'll fit into the President's Club, and he kind of smiled and said, what do you think? No, I'm not going to fit in at all. They don't like me. I don't like them. I mean, that was kind of the takeaway of my interview with him. And it was really surprising. At one point, he brought out a piece of paper that had his accomplishments listed on it. Things like, this was before the virus, of course, like, saving the economy and whatever things he thought he had done. And you can't imagine any other president taking out a single space list of their accomplishments to a reporter. Right?
Yeah, really.
It's amazing. Yeah.
So let me ask you this, because you got up close and personal. Was he what you expected? Was his demeanor, was his aura what you expected? No. Or was it something, were you surprised?
I was surprised that he was engaged. He was nice. I mean, in a personal way, it doesn't matter how someone necessarily treats a reporter in an interview, right? So but I did think it was interesting that he can be so charming. He was very engaged, very charming. I did bring him a copy of one of my old books called The Residence, which I had talked to you about, and he said, beautiful cover. I love the gold and the black, and this is great. Like, he is somebody who wants to be flattered, and if you flatter him, he will flatter you back. And I think in that way, that's part of how he's gotten to where he is. He can be charming. And, I think that, we know this, that a lot of this is an act. And in some ways, that's almost more infuriating, because I've talked to resident staff who say that he is quite kind to them on the second floor of the White House where the family lives. But the impression that I have, if you just watch him or follow him on Twitter, would be that he's like raging all the time, right? And But I think a lot of that is for show.
Yeah, well, I don't think he does anything that isn't deliberate and orchestrate before he does it, right? That's his style.
Yeah.
I knew him years ago back in New York, in my New York days, and a lot of my friends,
really?
a lot of my friends hung out with him then, and then he was just kind of a jerk.
Oh.
Right. He was your typical, 30-year-old. Well, no, he was the man about town. He was like everybody else in New York. Everybody always thought that we all thought we were terrific, the best in the, and he wasn't any different. He was just more obnoxious about it than some. But the thing is this: here's where I really see him different than everybody else that we were talking about in the book. And that is, the others hold such a high regard for the office. And he uses it clearly, strictly for personal gain. And that's who the guy is. Did you get any sense that he understands this, how special the residence he occupies is?
No. And that's such a good question. I think back to George H.W. Bush, who said, I feel the same sense of wonder and majesty about this office today as I did when I first walked in here. And this is what he wrote in his diary, his last day as president. And it's not partisan. Obama talked about reverence. If you don't have a sense of reverence for this house and this position, then you shouldn't be here, essentially, is what he said. And my sense is that Trump is, he's really not interested in history. And in fact, I asked him if he could see himself becoming friends with the former president in the same way that Thomas Jefferson and John Adams became friends after being rivals. And I do think he didn't really know that story. I don't think Obama was the smartest person in the room, right? And he knew it. And I think that sometimes that could be tough for some people. Trump, I don't think, is the smartest person in the room most times. And I don't think he cares. And that's exactly what your point.
Yeah.
I don't think he.
It's not that he's not smart. He's not.
Right.
I was talking to David Ignatius the other day, and I said to him, the thing about you, David, that always makes me crazy, and Bill Clinton was like this. They're the D all the above. You know what I'm saying? They know history. They know arts.
Yes.
They can write fiction. They can write nonfiction. This guy is not.
He's a great writer. Yeah.
Isn't he one? He's great. His new book is terrific. Yeah. But I have to say that's the thing about Trump. Trump is like just a one. He only one syllable. there's no depth to this guy, and there's no knowledge. I mean, he has no interest in history, so to speak, or maybe he does. We just don't know it. I don't know, but that's what makes him so nauseating, to be honest with you, and that a president of the United States could be that vacuous. And he went to good schools. I mean, so what does it say about the schools?
Well, this is just me thinking about this because I had been in the Oval Office when Obama was president, but it's been years, so I can see it in a way that other reporters who go there a lot don't see it, the contrast. And because I haven't been there in so long, I noticed this time that it was very bright in there. And a great story would be to know if he had TV lights put in above the desk. I didn't look up. But can't you imagine? I mean, he looked good. He looked like the light was perfect.
Well, I can certainly see him producing an interview, no question about it. Yes. That's just who he is. I mean, he produces everything. I don't think anything goes by him without him taking a look at it. I mean, that's what's so strange about the guy. I mean, in that sense, he's very overpowering and in control and knowledgeable. So when you spoke to the people in the residence, I can't get a handle on him just as a human being because we don't see that. He just doesn't show us any of his humanity at all, ever. What? And you mentioned that you spoke to some of the staff. What'd you get besides polite?
I was surprised. Right. I was surprised that what they said. I mean, they said that. I mean, of course, one person who's a housekeeper who still works there part time. She said it makes her blood boil walking in every day. You know, why she thinks to herself, why am I making this person's life easier? Which is interesting because you know, as you know, the resident staff, they really don't get into politics. They try really hard not to. So he's kind of pushed some of them over the edge. But the thing that surprised me more is that I interviewed 3 others, and on the record, I mean, these are retired staff too, so they don't have anything to lose. They don't have to paint a really rosy picture. But they said that he's, you know, quite kind to them behind the scenes. They see him playing with his grandkids. They're sitting on his lap, having dinner in the family dining room. You know, I don't know how to square this. I can't figure him out either. But that was surprising to me. I mean, what do you make of that?
You know, it's funny. You see him with the grandkids and you see his children adore him, but we don't know whether the children adore him or they fear him.
Right.
Right. And that's always been a question in my mind. And they're programmed. That's clear. They're programmed. Who isn't as a child of a powerful parent to some degree, I suspect. But like I said, you don't get humanity from him. You don't get depth. And that's odd to me. So like even if he's dealing with Ivanka, it's like he's pushing her to be something. You be the girl who becomes not my daughter, the mother of my grandchildren. Do you know there's a difference? He does not. Yeah. He does. You know, I had a great dad. May rest in peace. And you know, I could talk politics, and he was in politics, and all sorts of things all day long. But you know what? He also was daddy. Yeah. To the day he died, and I was, you know, obviously that was only a few years ago. I don't get that. You don't get that from Trump. You just don't get that.
Like he doesn't want that, and I think. I keep wondering why, you know, we don't see him on the South Lawn playing with Barron. We sometimes forget that Barron's around, right? Yeah. I think on purpose, but Melania is so protective of him. But it is sad that we don't see that humanity from him. And I don't know why. Listen, I've interviewed people who are national security people, and one top aide who was fired from the White House. And he said, look, nothing, like to your point, he sees absolutely everything that the media sees. So he's obsessed with his image, and that he's completely obviously distracted by it. He's not interested in being briefed on what's going on in the world as much as he is as what's on Fox. You know, that's everything to him. And so I don't know why he doesn't see the value in, you know, playing soccer. Maybe he thinks that he would be made fun of. You know, he's much older. If he's going and kicking a soccer ball around with his young son, what would the media reaction be of that, you know, to that?
I just think he has this protective edge around him. You know, he encapsulates himself in within the image he wants you all to think, or we all to think, is the image. And he's got to have a reason for that. There, you know, it may be, Kate, knock, knock, nobody's there.
I don't know. When I left the office after our interview, he said, say hi to President Bush for me.
That's
kind of
snarky.
sarcastically.
Yeah. He's
Very
a snarky.
snarky.
Yeah.
And
He'd be a snarky spoil. Listen, I went to private school, and and hung out. The boys' school that was one of the schools that he went to. The military academy. We all came out of that. Some of us got past it, thank God. Snarky.
But like mini masters of the universe kind of thing.
Yeah.
Think of him that way of 80s kind of money and power. And I think, he didn't think he'd be elected, and look where he is. It's hard to believe.
Well,
but
I'm not sure he got himself elected. So that's a whole other conversation. That's
true. That's more of a David Ignatius conversation.
Exactly.
But I do think, though, if you're going to do armchair psychology on him, to your point, I think that he does want to be accepted in this club, and he, deep down, he wants to be loved by the Clintons and the Bushes. And he said that he told me he was very pleased that he was invited to Bush's funeral, and Bush was a great man. And it's a shame that, in 2016, he had to run against Jeb, and that's what happens in politics. He thinks that politics is a blood sport in a way that even the Clintons don't. I think he takes it even to an extent that we've never seen, right?
Yeah, no. But he's a case of arrested development, too. He's stuck.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's stuck somewhere, and there's no question about it. I want to ask you this. I can't imagine having all the power in the world. That's number one. But I can't imagine having all the power in the world on one morning, and at that afternoon, you've got none. Wow. That's, and you're young, and you have a big part of your life ahead of you to boot. We can't just talk about Trump. There are all these, there were the four others still living, I guess, one passed. But did you get a sense of that? It's a huge thing to walk out of that office after having that for 4 or 8 years. And then where are you? It's
amazing. That's what I end the book on. Obama's meeting with Bush 41, George H.W. Bush. 3 days before Bush died, Obama went down. He was the newest, member of the club. And just 3 days. It's kind of amazing. Bush was very, very sick, and Obama was in Houston, and he went to visit this man who he really respected, and, a member of the greatest generation. He called him my buddy 41, and they had a lot of good private conversations about foreign policy, and Obama spent more than an hour with him. And I talked to Bush's chief of staff, who described it. It was Obama, Bush, Neil Bush, and then John Meacham, the historian, was there, and he's close to the Bushes. And Bush was in his wheelchair, and very, very ill. And Obama kind of leaned in and was talking to him. And then at about 40 minutes into the conversation, he said, "Can I have a few minutes alone with your dad?" And so Meacham left, and Neil left, and left the two of them alone. And I'm hoping that Obama writes about it in his memoir, what he said. But I just think you can't imagine two men that are just different political party, different generation, different race, but they had a common bond and respect for the office, a sense of reverence, and really sharp, smart people who cared about this country. And I don't want to sound naive about it, because I know that, of course, there are rivalries between Obama ran against George W. Bush's war in Iraq, right, in 2008. So it's not easy, but it's not like this. We've just sunk to a different level. In everything.
I said we're all going to need a giant bath when this guy is finally out of office. And, and it makes you wonder, can you get back to where we were? I hope, I talked about this with David, just can we get back? Have the institutions been so degraded at this point that there's nothing left to retrieve? Is it over? Or, but we've gotten through worse in this country. In Civil War, Doris Kearns Goodwin yelled at me a couple of weeks ago and said, "Now, Halli, we got through the Civil War. This is not as bad as." I don't know.
Well, that's exactly what Bush thinks. That's what George W. Bush thinks. And he thinks that if we've gotten through the Civil War, we can get through this. But what does that tell you? That we're comparing it to the Civil War.
Yeah.
Right?
Think about that. Right. And you know what? We are in a civil war. It's a different kind of war. I don't care what anybody says. As far as I'm concerned, this is a cold civil war in this country, and that concerns me. And the thing about the Civil War was, which I did a book on and all this kind of stuff, and lived and breathed and died it for a while, way back when, that was purged That was a purging. There was a lot of crap that needed to get purged, and it was fired. The world went on fire, and we purged. And this just keeps simmering and simmering and simmering, and I don't know that it ever gets to get purged until we get to something that will ultimately do it.
I like that point a lot. I love that point, because it feels like, doesn't it feel like at least every week, at least once a week, you see a headline on your phone or whatever, and you think, oh my God, this is incredible. And then within 24 hours, you forget about it because there's something else that's incredible.
Right. Well, yeah, it's all coming at us too fast, way too fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a good thing. I want to go to your cover. This is really interesting. The cover of the book has a photo on it of the five, right? Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. I don't know if you know this story at the time, but the day that image was taken, there were a lot of images that were out there. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
And are you aware of the Jimmy Carter being off to the right?
Yes. I almost, so we had to find one where he wasn't standing off to the right, to be honest with you.
I don't know if anybody else knows about that. When the publisher sent, I went, does Kate know about the brouhaha, what that went on with that photo shoot that day?
Yeah. And I mentioned I mentioned in the book that the former presidents didn't even really want Carter to show up. I mean, because he's made it harder for them, and he doesn't play by the rules. That's why when I interviewed Donald Trump, he said, he thinks Jimmy Carter's gotten a raw deal, and he hasn't been embraced by these guys either. And those images of him standing awkwardly, oh my gosh, it says everything, right?
Right. And it's so interesting, the relationship. That's why I love this book, because everybody's got an agenda. These guys all do have hearts. Certainly Carter has heart, but it's like combustion. They all have their own thing. You put it all together, and there's a story at every turn. You could do with part 2 of this book, because there's so much that goes on between them. But their relationship in general, they found their way to,
I think that so you have Bush Sr. and Obama in that friendship, which I don't think gets much attention compared to Clinton and Bush Sr. You hear so much about them. And then W and Clinton. There was, Clinton called W after Trump was elected, and they both kind of said, oh my God, can you believe what happened? And then because W doesn't like Trump. Think of what he said about his brother, and what he said about the war in Iraq being the worst mistake in history. And a lot of people agree with that, by the way. But it was just like these two men, Clinton and Bush, united in their disbelief. And then Clinton said, you have to make sure that he doesn't get rid of PEPFAR, the AIDS work that Bush had set up in Africa and saved lots of lives in Africa. People on the right and the left praise him for that. And so the fact that Clinton and Bush were kind of strategizing how to keep this program in place when Trump was elected, I think that is a team, right? That's the definition of what a team is. I
find it interesting. Maybe they have, we don't know, but if ever there was a time there was going to be a coup in this country, this is it.
Yeah. They won't do it. They won't do it. They won't even do anything around the pandemic. And I recently talked to them within the month, not to the former presidents themselves, but to their top people. And they are ready and waiting for this phone call, but they know it's not going to come. And they can't do anything together without Trump, because it will just become a story about how they're doing something without Trump and how much they all dislike Trump. So what do? Their hands are tied.
Well, I don't know. I thought that W did a good turn.
Yeah. It was just yes, it was nice.
It was more than everybody else. Then, of course, Obama took a shot the other day at the commencement thing. That was pretty funny. Yeah. I'm going to talk to you about that, because I want to say that I actually think that right now, it's going to be interesting in the fall, that Trump is not running against Biden. He's running against Obama. And Obama is running against Trump. That's going to be a whole new kind of fall for us, I think. Listen, so much to talk about and so little time, and I'm lost on time because we lost power for a little while there. But let me keep going if it's okay with you. I think we're good on time a little bit. I want to talk about Melania. and first ladies in all of this, because they too have to go on with their lives. But Melania is interesting to me. I don't think that the first ladyship is evolutionary. I think it's individualized. How a woman sees herself in that role is how that role becomes for her. You didn't maybe have the option to opt out before quite as much, but the role is the role you make of it. To me, she's absentee.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she is. She's the only former first lady, the only person she has any connection to is Laura Bush. And, she's complained to Laura Bush about how tough the job is. And Laura Bush has kind of given her a pep talk about it. I think that she, remember at the beginning, people thought that she was trapped in the White House and that she was a victim in all of this. I'm fascinated by that because she is not at all a victim. And she is, look back at the interview she did about the birther movement. She was saying that, yes, it's totally legitimate to ask whether Obama was born in the United States or not. I mean, she's on board with her husband and behind him 100%. I think it's just so interesting that we, a lot of Democrats, I think, loved this image of her, like this damsel in distress image. That's not who she is. She's strong. And you could just disagree with the kind of person she is, but she knows exactly what's going on. And she's tough as nails, and I feel like she's a cipher and we'll never really know who she is. And that's the way she wants to keep it.
Did you see her last night?
Yeah, I thought that everything is so canned and kind of staged with them. It's so awkward, right?
Yeah, really. It was a PSA.
Yes.
But, it's interesting, other than the wife number two, he loves foreign women who have this Ava Gabor, Zsa Gabor kind of kiddish, thing. Yeah. But who were also tough. I mean, the Vanya or whatever, I mean, she ran that company until he couldn't handle having to go up against her when she got popular in New York. But this one, I think is it's a sad story because she could be so helpful, particularly with this whole thing with the virus right now. That's where I wonder about her because she doesn't take the mantle when she could be doing so much good, and that she wouldn't get out there and just do a live interview with on CNN last night. That just made me crazy.
Right. I mean, she wasn't participating in a town hall. She filmed something and sent it.
Exactly. And it's crazy. That's a crazy thing to do. I mean, these are tough times. People need to hear from her on something like this. And she's just been completely absent through this whole thing. So I agree with you. I don't think she's a weak-kneed by any stretch of the imagination. But I think she's also working from a place of insecurity and can't find her footing.
Yeah. And following one of the most, even though there are a lot of people who didn't like Michelle Obama, the people who do love her. So she's following one of the most popular first ladies, right? So what is that like? It's just speaking to the insecurity she must feel. I know that I spoke to Stephanie Grisham at the beginning of her time in the White House, and she felt an incredible amount of pressure. How do you follow this person who is a mega celebrity who people love and your English isn't your first language, right? You weren't raised here. Maybe you don't know everything about the expectations of the job. You haven't ever been in politics before. Trump had never held an elected office before. So you've got to feel a sense I don't feel sorry for her. I just think she was unprepared.
It's really interesting. I would never have that thought. I would never think to myself, I have to follow this.
I mean, the public does, though.
Do they?
I think that, I think following, I feel like anybody would feel nervous about following Michelle Obama, right? I mean, I would. What are you going to do? What do you?
I guess, I wouldn't. I would just say, I would embrace her and say, come help me. And where do we go from here?
Well, that's a better way of doing things, I think.
My whole life isn't all that together, but it just strikes me. It totally strikes me. Women, everybody likes to love the first lady. That's the thing that's so. I think the only one who people didn't want to love was Nancy Reagan. Everybody wanted to love everybody else, and opportunity squandered. If you ask me, That's where I see her. Tell us something you uncovered that you wouldn't put in the book. Come on, Kate. Nobody's listening.
Oh gosh. You know what? I have to think about that a little bit because there were. I'm not the kind of person that holds back. I held back a little bit in the residence because I didn't want to get anyone fired.
Sure.
But I put most of the things that anything interesting I put in there. That the fact that the Trumps sleep in separate bedrooms and the resident staff found that out on inauguration night. I interviewed the head engineer and he said he gets a phone call from the chief usher who runs the White House and says the president's too hot, and a minute later he gets a call the first lady's too cold, and he was completely perplexed. What are you talking? And then he said it just clicked that he understood they were in different bedrooms. I mean, I put stuff like that in there. Maybe some other people wouldn't, but I think that is interesting about their relationship. That hasn't been the case since the Kennedys. Sleeping in separate rooms.
Isn't there also the story that she actually doesn't live on the White House grounds?
That is not true. But yes, there was that story that she lived in a house in Potomac. But no one could ever find that house. And all signs are that that's not true. But
and what about, I'm just in the interest of time, I was just going to jump to, as far as the son is concerned, do you get anything on that at all?
Barron?
Yeah.
Oh, no, nothing on Barron. And I mean, they are more protective of Barron than even the Obamas were of Sasha and Malia. I mean, you cannot even ask questions because the kids are off limits.
Yeah, the kids are, and they should be off limits, except that he's so mysterious.
Yeah.
Chelsea Clinton, at least they let her walk with them. You saw they let you see her, and this kid you almost don't ever see anymore. That's it. This COVID-19, let's wrap up on this. It's taken the life of a very special man, someone you got to know for your book, The Residence, Wilson Roosevelt German, 9/11.
U.S.
Yeah.
He was a wonderful person. I mean, I just talked to his daughter yesterday. He was 91 when he passed away. He started working in the White House during the Eisenhower administration. I mean, it's incredible he was there for the Kennedy assassination. He described to me, he said it was complete silence on the White House grounds. All he could hear was the clicking of the horses' hooves. This is when Kennedy's casket was taken away. I mean, he's seen so much, and he retired in 2012 as he was the head butler. Then he came back as a doorman because he missed it so much, and he finally retired for good in 2012. Really soft-spoken man, beloved by everyone. And I know you're short on time, but I would just say that, he was African American, and for him to work for the Obamas, his daughter told me it was the greatest honor of his life. He never thought that he would see that day. We're serving the first African American president and first lady. So, he called the presidents and the first ladies his second family at the White House. His story incredible.
Yeah, that's President's Club. That's what it is, right? You get into it whether once you get elected, that's it. You're a member of the club. What happens to it with this guy? I mean, he's destroyed every other institution. Does he kill the club too? I mean, what happens? I mean, I can't imagine him getting out. Let's January 20, whatever it is. He's gone, and I'm curious as to what the hell actually happens.
Do you have another hour to talk about it? Because
we'll have to do it, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, Kate, another great one from you. Thanks so much. I love your work. You just humanize politics for us, and you know what? That's such a wonderful gift to bring us. Thank you.
Thank you. I got to read your Civil War book too.
It's a photography book on Antietam National Battlefield. I worked with the Park Service for 5 years. First woman since from Matthew Brady to get in and film and photograph Antietam Battlefield. So yeah. That's
you're a smarty pants. That's a very interesting.
I'm really not.
Wow.
Oh my God, girl. Nice to talk to you. Have a great, wonderful run with this book.
Thanks so much for having me.
Sure thing. I've been speaking with Kate Andersen Brower. Her latest book, Team of Five: The President's Club in the Age of Trump. For more information on the book and on all of Kate's books, visit her website at katebrower.com. You are listening to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts weekly at hallicasserjayne.com and is available wherever you listen to your podcasts. Be sure to find us on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and on all your favorite apps. You can find the Halli Casser-Jayne Show on your Alexa device, too. Just say, the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. Oh, and come play with me on Twitter at the Halli CJ Show. It's time for Halli and Matt. Here we go. Welcome, my friends. Here's where we are this week on Matt. Here we go. I can't talk. We've reached a milestone. There are more than 2 million cases of COVID-19 in the United States, the largest amount of cases in any country worldwide. More than 115,000 are dead, an average of 800 Americans dying of the dreaded disease every day. Headlines read, the coronavirus pandemic isn't ending, it's surging. In fact, in many states, such as my state of Florida, daily infection rate is higher than it was at the so-called height of the pandemic. Yet the president has announced he'll be taking his MAGA show on the road, scheduling campaign rallies around the country. Governors afraid of the wrath of Trump, maybe? They're not responding to the case spikes. And another 1.5 million have filed for unemployment claims. While you weren't looking, the federal deficit, by the way, topped 26 trillion. All I have to say is, not another good morning in America, Matt. How are things in Washington, D.C.?
Halli, things are fine. I'm fine. Everything's going well. You can't complain about anything. It's all working out. Okay, maybe not. Maybe it's a little more trouble than that.
I mean, a little. This is nuts. I have to start with COVID, okay?
Let's start with COVID. I want to hear your latest thoughts about COVID.
I am so irritated, I cannot begin to tell you. If you're not on Twitter, because I know you don't like Twitter all that much, but you got to go to, I have been screaming for 2 weeks. The pandemic is getting worse and worse, and the media has just abandoned it as a subject matter. Everybody has abandoned it. It's nowhere to be talked about. Today was the first day, by the way. I guess once the burial happened with Floyd George, that's it. I mean, that's, okay, we can move on to the next. Did I say Floyd George? George Floyd. I keep having a thing with his name. May he rest in peace. This is nuts. Listen to what I'm telling you, okay? 12 states are seeing case surges. Florida, we've topped where we were at the height of this thing, right? Texas, new cases, the highest one-day total since the pandemic emerged. 8,553 cases in Florida over a 7-day period. Again, the highest. California hospitalizations are the highest since May 13th. All while Trump, by the way, is race baiting on Twitter. Talk to me about this. How could this be? This is scary.
Well, it's always, concerning, disturbing when case numbers go up. And that's happening in places that, did not bear the brunt of the first wave. So, New York has seen its cases go way down. New York City didn't have any new cases for a couple of days, which was remarkable given where it was. And you're seeing it starting to spike upward. That said, I mean, different governors are taking different approaches. New Jersey's Democratic Governor Phil Murphy, ended the stay-at-home order yesterday. They're doing a lot to open up. Even New York State is opening up in different by region if they meet certain metrics. So you get a lot of things going on at once in a big, diverse country with 50 separate health systems.
Let me put this out to you, okay? It ain't working. Treating it as individual states, and it doesn't matter what happens in A state because it's not going to affect B state, it clearly isn't working. Let's take, for instance, Florida, where we have a lot of people coming down here. This is a state where people are crossing that border every single second of every single day. So my point to you is, if it would working, we wouldn't see these spikes. That's right. The key. And so that whole positioning isn't working. Now, I understand that there's an economy that you have to worry about, but Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. life first. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, it's you don't want to see caseloads go up, and it's obviously we don't know yet if the protests are going to cause a big spike because of people being in so much proximity, or whether the fact that they're mostly outdoors, not going to matter as much. We don't know. So look, you don't want to see any numbers going up, especially before the fall and winter when it's likely to recur again, according to public health officials. Look, in an ideal world, there would probably be a uniform national standard, and that's how we would deal with this. But, the closest we got were the Fauci guidelines that they put out.
Which were never met in the first place when they opened up the states. Anyhow, none of the states met the qualifications that were put out there by the way, speaking of
right.
Fauci, Dr. Birx, where'd they go? Gone,
right,
baby,
right.
gone.
They're off.
So we talk
totally quiet.
Totally. So you and I talk politics. So here's what if the president wasn't Trump, this would not be the situation. Can we agree on that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what these red state governors would be doing. I mean, let's say Hillary had won and this happened. I can imagine, Governors DeSantis and others would be pretty much doing what they're doing, right?
No, I don't think so. I think this is about lickspittle. I love that word.
I see. So you think it's all right? No, you've said that before.
Yeah,
that's possible.
And
I don't know, but they might be doing it just to, troll Hillary if she was president.
The thing that's really interesting, because I said this too, Ron DeSantis did this. He's the governor of Florida, for you who don't know, who, right wing, who after election went right to the center, and he became everybody's favorite. And then this happened. And suddenly Trump said he was going to declare his new home, Florida. And that's when it all changed for Ron DeSantis. They're bringing the Republican convention to Jacksonville, supposedly. So, there was a method to DeSantis's madness because, like Trump, he believes it all rests on the economy, stupid. It's
right.
politics.
Yeah, sure. If getting the convention was his goal.
I think so.
If he really believes that this is going to cause a health spike, he's going to have a lot of problems afterwards. But
well, I don't think any of these guys think ahead. I think they all go with the moment, and that's where they go, and that's how they play it. Okay, let's move on. George Floyd. This such a hard. This whole story. It's hard for me to watch anymore. The news, the funeral. I just cry. It's just. It's so sad. You have thoughts? Do Black lives finally matter, Matt?
They should. I think they should, and sometimes they haven't always, and so that's what's got a lot of people so upset. I mean, the footage of his being killed and suffocated is so disturbing. The heartbreaking, funeral with the family and the different memorial services. It's been very upsetting to watch, and this has been a very tough time for the country, and I hope some good comes out of it. I'm not so sure it will.
There's some strange things going on because we're so political and politicized, I guess.
Right.
The responses sometimes get in the way of what could be considered, a changeable moment. So we have Black Lives Matter this morning saying tear down the Washington Monument and the Jefferson Memorial. That ain't going to help. That's going to just inflame so many people. NASCAR banned the Confederate flag yesterday. Well, that was a long time coming. That was a good move, but
right.
It's going to inflame. It becomes a war between the right and the left. And of course, we have a president of the United States right now, this man called Trump. When they talk about changing the names on military bases, he says he'll cut off funds to the troops that were supposed to get a raise. He warns the Pentagon. Although this morning, I think Congress, the Senate, passed some kind of legislation, or they made the decision that they're going to require the Pentagon to change some of the names of the bases. But I'm going to put it like this to you, Matt. HBO Max pulls Gone with the Wind. A&E
right.
Live PD show. Wow, the political correctness may be what's stopping change at this point. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, look, I think there's a big public consensus for certain things, like reforming the police and demilitarizing the police and cracking down on cops who, have gotten only light discipline heretofore. So there's a big consensus for that. And as you say, there's not a big consensus for other things like, tearing down the Washington Monument or things like that. So, we're going to see what, how the political system kind of handles it in the weeks. But I think it's quite remarkable, the shift in kind of public opinion on the police and demilitarizing them and the degree to which they've been in the wrong. That's really quite striking.
Well, see, we hadn't really gotten to that yet because that's where. So let's get there.
Sorry.
No.
Didn't mean to jump ahead.
No, you did it absolutely right. There's no rules for the road here. It's just that I see an opening here, and I said, let's go.
I don't want you pulling me over. Okay, good.
Abolish the police. Who came up with that term? Bad term. Not what the Democrats are saying.
Or defund the police, yeah.
Right, okay. What? Where did that come from? I missed something along the way here? That's dumb.
Yeah, well, it's a phrase with a lot of ambiguity and thus confusion. And
which gave Trump, what he does best,
And look, Biden didn't take the bait. Spike Lee was on TV saying, look, we shouldn't abolish the police. So, I think calmer heads will prevail in the long run. You're not going to see major American cities completely abolish the police. But, I think as James Comey said, if they offload some of the things they do now, truancy, traffic enforcement, moving the homeless around, I don't think people will have a big problem if that's kind of depoliced.
It's weird, though, isn't it? So what do you do, though? If you say homelessness is a problem, people do speed. Well, you get traffic cops.
You need to enforce them. Whether you need to enforce those with guys with guns, I don't know.
Right.
I mean, really.
No, that I agree. That I totally agree. I think I want to. I'm stuck this week, Matt, on how politics is kind of getting in the way of what could be true change. Because everybody's coming up with catchphrases and Twitter becomes the home of, you can just put out a 3-word quote and then that becomes a hashtag and then that becomes whatever. And there's no depth behind it, no variation on the theme, it becomes radical. It becomes black and white, great metaphor at this point. Yeah. That concerns me.
Right. That's where it starts, and you have to see where it ends up as it goes through politics, not just nationally, but in municipalities and states around the country. I vary between being hopeful and morose about where things go from here. I think there is. I'm delighted that there is kind of a good national consensus on doing the right thing in terms of reforming police and We'll see. If there were governors who were saying, I'm planning to abolish the police in my state, I'd be more worried. That's not really what's happening.
I want to go back to Gone with the Wind, and that's because on social media, I was bombarded with people talking about Gone with the Wind being pulled by HBO Max. It's symbolic because they said they'll put it back on eventually. They
say they'll put it back on with some commentary.
Right.
In front, right.
But it gets into two things here. One, it gets into censorship, and it also gets into, very few people have ever read the book Gone with the Wind. They watched the movie. And
I'm one of them.
I love that book, and I read that book a lot. As a writer type me, it's a phenomenal piece of work. But it's romanticized. But remember when it was written in the 1920s and yada yada yada, all of that. So, but it gets to this, which is very funny. I bring it up because Mammy, who was played by
Hattie Daniels,
who won the first black woman to win an Oscar,
right?
First black, I think, to win an Oscar. That role ironically in the book of the slave, she's the wisest person in the entire story. She's the only one with any sense. That is never a point that is made about this book, and it interests me that is always discarded. It's the fact that she's a slave, period. But she was written as the wisest person, the only one who had any sense in the entire book.
Well, look, I don't think you ever like to see, art judged by, standards. I think every couple of years there's objections raised to Huckleberry Finn.
Right.
Because
Right.
He uses the N-word repeatedly, and Disney had issues about should they cut some of the more gratuitous racial characters that appear briefly in films like Dumbo. These things get faced all the time. I mean, if HBO puts this back in the collection quickly with some commentary up front, I don't think that's any big deal. Yeah. But I'm not happy that their first reaction was to just pull it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a part of the culture. You can't erase it. And,
Well, I want to bring this up because I say, I hate the term, but I'm going to say it, whitewash. If you ignore history, you're doomed to repeat history. You need to know history. You need to see it. It needs to be part of the zeitgeist to see where we came from to where we are.
Oh, yeah. No, look, I agree. And
yeah.
And the same is true for things like Birth of a Nation, which
right.
is even more, racist.
Yeah, I just that's it. I know we agree on this.
Well, corporations are not known for their backbones. They're gonna seek not to offend, and that can be good, that can be bad, but that's what they do. I lived in Atlanta 30 years ago, and Ted Turner, who of course founded CNN, the Cineplex in the CNN building played Gone with the Wind 24/7 all the time. There's one theater devoted to Gone with the Wind.
Yeah.
and Ted's a liberal. That was just sort of seen as part of the culture of the place. I don't think people saw it as, it was certainly racist, but I think, as John Harris said in Politico today, it was seen more as like theme parky rather than
a statement. Right.
A statement or a present danger. It was not that.
Yeah.
And that I think was naive on the part of people who saw it that way. But in any event, it just shows you what kind of dramatic shift. I mean, it's not that people didn't think it was racist. It obviously was. The Klan gets a big pat on the back in the book and the movie. And by the way, why are they always fighting over Ashley Wilkes? He's such a drip. The whole it's a very strange plot. This drippy guy is at the center of it. It's really it's true. It's really funny
about that. But
another
time we'll take that up, because that is a conversation well worth having. By the way, let's just take this over to the election and Joe Biden, who said something that I'm startled. I'm startled that he, of all people, would have the courage to say it, to be honest with you, because he's not that kind of a guy. But he is the presumed party nominee of the Democratic Party. He's a former vice president. And he said that he believes, and stated unequivocally, that Trump is going to try and steal the election. Jeez, Matt. When would that have ever happened before?
Yeah, that could never happen. Well, there's steal and there's steal, right? There's there's the don't leave if you lose. There's the, try to...
The Georgia story?
At the polls. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of variations of that, but it's, look, there's nothing about Trump that's ever reassuring. There's always a new low, and you have to, any Democrat would not be doing their due diligence if they were not preparing for a stolen election.
This is pretty crazy stuff, though, that when you get somebody with the kind of gravitas that Biden has to make that kind of a statement, this is no joke. Trump's poll numbers are tanking. He's down to 39%.
Yeah. State
by state, he's in the hole in most states. I think he's up by 1 in North Carolina. Everywhere else, he's down by. You and I were worried about the 3%. They're quite a bit more than 3% differentials now. Which what happened in Georgia the other day. I can't imagine anybody doesn't know, but it was a debacle of only measuring up to the one that happened in the Stacey Abrams governor's race not so long ago. This is scary stuff, Matt, and it's concerning to me that maybe not enough is being written about this. We're going to have somebody on the show in a couple of weeks, or maybe next week, I'm not even sure, talking about this gerrymandering and the mess it's made. But this is serious stuff when a vice president says this, and we're not laughing at it, and we're talking about it as real. Yeah. And here comes Trump trying to save his day. Says he's taking his show on the road, and let's go back to George Floyd. He's beginning his MAGA rallies in Tulsa, Oklahoma on Juneteenth Day 1921, by the way, folks, I'll tell you, massacre of black people. What the hey, Matt, what's going on here?
Well, I mean, look, the racial overtones and the race baiting of what he does is pretty transparent, and it's ugly, and that's leaving aside the whole public health thing. So it's not surprising he's doing it. But look, I think he can still win, of course, but he's in trouble for a lot of reasons, and I think the economy obviously is a big part of it, and the general sense of chaos in the country. But also they want people want things to get quiet and get back to normal, and I think they're losing faith in his ability to do anything like that. I mean, the Twitter and all this craziness was something people would either put up with or sort of like because it was
funny,
funny,
amusing,
entertaining, or shaking up the system, making liberal tears, whatever. But all that now just feels like it's just
chaos,
making things worse in the country. Nobody, I think, really can have a lot of confidence that he can settle the country down. And unless you're, just some, white nationalist or QAnon type who wants to, burn it all down, then.
Well, let me throw this at you.
It's a huge disappointment.
Yeah, but let me throw this at you. He cannot win with his 38%, Matt. That's the thing that's so weird here. He's appealing to this very small group of people. He can't win with them. That's not enough for him to win. So I don't get the thinking.
Well, I think the feeling is there, and I don't think it's enough, is to say that, the choice is just Trump. They're going to lose, but they're going to make it about Biden and as much as Trump and move some Republicans back into the fold and, get up to
you think he can
electoral win.
Okay, but he's losing on women. That's his biggest thing.
No, there's no question he's in the shitter.
Well, the reason I'm saying it is because I still don't see, I don't see how this works for him if he doesn't go to somewhat more to the center so that he can pull in back some of these people, because he's only holding it on men, right? White, uneducated men is still, but he's lost some of them. I don't know. Yeah. The whole thing seems like he's lost. Every day he's throwing out he's throwing out a new campaign slogan because the one he's got, "Make America Great Again" isn't working. "Make America Better." Everything he Law and Order. It's all everybody's just going, huh? Yeah.
No, I agree with that. He's not getting his numbers to go in the right place. But I think people I know over there and elsewhere, I think the feeling is, and this may not be right, but it is their feeling that the economy picks up some steam, the civil unrest abates, or to the degree it continues, it helped Trump, and they make the rest of the race about Biden, and he just ekes out another win. That's really what they're
well, that's all they have. I mean, that's all that they can do.
It's not really the most inspiring message.
No, for sure. And it's interesting too. I mean, they're kind of playing the short game instead of playing the long game. If it had been me, they should have kept this thing. It might have hurt the economy slowly, but if they had a chance to reopen and really get things going, let's say in August into September, October, maybe November. Now what they've done is cases of the coronavirus have eked up so high. I think that they're going to have to get to a shutdown again at some point because the hospitals can't deal with it, and they may be bringing it on at the wrong timing. Is my point.
That could happen.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah, that's a place for all it's worth. Romney this morning predicted that Trump's going to win again. Whatever I said, for what it's worth, he made a statement like that. Maybe that's a warning to people. I want to talk about Mike Flynn very briefly because this is pretty incredible. The Justice Department's request to dismiss charges against Trump's former national security advisor is a quote-unquote gross abuse of power, an ex-judge appointed to review the case says. There's a pardoning issue here, too. Do you know about this? That if Flynn is pardoned, he loses his right to assert his Fifth Amendment if he's forced to testify in a post-Trump presidency hearing, which is maybe...
Well, that's true, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a mess. How does this end?
Well, I think it definitely strengthens the case that judge and everyone else who said that the, Justice Department intervention on Flynn's behalf, wish they reversed their, earlier plea agreement, said their earlier plea agreement should be overturned because this guy did nothing wrong, was kind of unbelievable and blatantly partisan. And, a miscarriage of justice. And so they, this adds to it. This is a well-respected retired judge. He's a Clinton appointee, which some Republicans will make an issue of, but he's an extremely tough law enforcement guy. He was a mob prosecutor. So, his word carries.
Dirty bar.
Yeah, I mean, what's incredible is Flynn had a plea agreement. I mean, he wasn't going to really go to jail. I mean, maybe 6 months, but even that probably would have gotten waived. He'd already cooperated, supposedly, or at least a fair amount, and then he got the new, and then Trump got involved. And then this new turn, yeah. So
there's more to this story. There's more to this story. Yeah, don't you agree?
Absolutely. So, yeah. So I want to see how this plays out in the courts.
I'm very curious as to the Russia collusion thing. Sorry, Matt, but I just absolutely unequivocally do not think that story is over. I don't. Either did Bob Mueller, so.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't bet against that.
Yeah, so we won't know maybe until 8 years down the road or something. But there's going to be more to that.
Sure.
Speaking of crazy, so John Bolton's book is about to come out June 23rd. President went after him again yesterday. The White House threatened him if he brings it out. And he wrote some piece, or his lawyer did, about what they went through and the hoops they jumped to make this palatable for the White House. And it's still not palatable for the White House, and they say screw the White House. It's a book you want to read, and it's a book you don't want to read because he could have ended Trump's reign, the one man who could. So, but it's out there June 23rd. As of today, anyway, we'll see what the White House actually winds up doing. We got to go, but I want to end on this good note.
Yes.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson lets Brits that don't live together have sex for the first time since March.
I think it's always great when the Prime Minister blesses such unions. This is what it's come to.
We are living in strange times, my friend. Thank you for tuning in to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, a production of Resec LLC. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, and is available at hallicasserjayne.com and on all your favorite apps. Be sure to visit us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and follow me on Twitter at The Halli CJ Show. Until next time, this is Halli Casser-Jayne.